one of the things that they valued about JLI but did not find in other spaces is if we were baking a JLI cake, everybody would be involved at the beginning and would add the ingredients. And the final cake will be kind of something everybody could enjoy and said, I helped to bake this cake.
This is a podcast called Walk, Talk, Listen. An attempt to connect people and make this world a bit better by sharing opinions and experiences based on the belief that everyone's perspective is true, albeit partial. My name is Maurice Bloem, and I would like to welcome you to yet another episode of Walk, Talk, Listen. Okay, good day, everybody. This is another episode of the podcast Walk, Talk, Listen. And actually, it's a special episode again where we try to, shed the light on an organization called Joint Learning Initiative on Faith and Local Communities. And I'm delighted with today's guest who will, talk with us about JLI. And that's the chair of the JLI community. And her name is Dionne. Dionne, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you, Maurice, and thank you for the invitation to join you on this walk and talk experience. My name is Dionne Gravesande. I'm currently residing in London. I am the chair of the Joint Learning Initiative. That is my privilege to lead and serve that community and that body of work as it develops forward. My role in the UK, in London, I work for an organisation by the name of Christian Aid, and I am the principal advisor for our corporate global partnerships and theology.
And Dionne, since how many years do you work for Christian Aid?
Far too long, far too long years with Christian Aid. So
yeah.
In total, I guess I have over 25 years of leadership experience working with churches, faith institutions, national and international government organizations. So a plethora of time of working with partners, with other allies on this journey. So within that, I include JLI. So I joined JLI in 2018, I believe, and took up the chair in 2021.
Okay. And do you still remember the first time that you heard about JLI?
I do. I worked with my then international director, who was around at the time, I think JLI was birthed, right? So there was a lot of excitement around this vision and this community and how it was actually filling a gap, in terms of practitioners, advisors, officers and managers working across different faiths, thinking about how best to evidence and demonstrate the value in the work. And there was a great sense of, I think for years, right, it's not a secret just how much work and voluntary engagement is coming from faith institutions, right? In terms of communities often are understood as the backbone of communities and spaces for all, really. So I think they are a real provider of active services. And so to be able to demonstrate and tell that story better and demonstrate the value and the worth to others is what I think part of that original vision was around. And so there was a lot of passion for that then in 2010. And I still felt that passion when talking about the work of JLI in 2018 when I came on board. And, there was a fantastic range of skills and experience and knowledge in the room. And not too often do you see, the nexus where faith communities, policymakers, knowledge specialists, researchers, academics, um, and grassroots community all come into one place in a space where there is genuine equity across the table. That is
Mhm.
encouraging to see and to experience.
No, thank you for that, Dion. But if I kind of, try to force you to really pinpoint at what you like most about JLI, um, what would that be? What would be your explanation?
I think it's reach across various groupings of professionals, communities, and academia. I think JLI, in my experience, is the best of how those groupings come together to learn, share, and move forward.
And is that something that is still relevant today?
Absolutely. So I think, trust is really important when
Mhm.
engaging and trying to convene um, spaces for real conversation, particularly on tough issues across different sectors in society today. And I think the methodology, the way in which JLI convenes its partners that it works with and through the authenticity is absolutely there today, and that role is as more important. Is still important today. So if we think about coming out of COVID, if you think about how we come out of or work within various regions in the world where the backdrop, is tough and lots of challenges. I think it's a model of how communities convene and explore together is highly credible. It's very good at what it does.
You are at the moment the chair of the board of JLI. Um, before that, you had another role. Um, and if I would ask you to share an anecdote or an experience that best describes your time with JLI so far, yeah, what would that be? Or a memory?
I have a memory that still stays with me really to this day, and it was my first meeting when I was on the boards, clearly not the chair of board, and it was in Birmingham in in the UK, and it was hosted by Islamic Relief,
Hmm.
and it was it it was welcoming but absolutely authentic insofar as very different people around the room. So in thinking about the diversity of audience, that audience I think was as diverse as it could get. And yet it wasn't our differences that kept us, separated around the table. It was what united us and how we were drawn together in a, you know, single vision, in a vision, a common vision, I would say, or a shared vision. And I remember how it made me feel as opposed to, kind of what was said. I mean, lots was said and done, but I felt connected. I felt that this was a community of like-minded people who were looking at ways and how we could strengthen our practices around engagement with religious communities on issues of faith and development at every level, at local level, at regional level, at global levels. And the examples that I heard were not too dissimilar to the examples I had experienced. And here I felt a community that was operating within this kind of multi-faith space, but absolutely focused on looking for, kind of the positive changes we could make together, how we could develop the programs. At that time, there were different programs on the table together, in order that all of the communities that we are working with and through are able to develop and become more resilient. Really, I remember the feeling, and the feeling was awesome. It was really good.
Mm. That's great. Yeah. I well, you know that I'm relatively new to JLI, so a newbie. But I totally understand. Yeah, being welcomed and by this very diverse community, coming from different angles, but at the end of the day have a lot in common. And I think I'm very impressed by a publication that JLI produced. I think JLI calls it, that's our flagship, and that is the state of the evidence. Yeah, can you tell the listeners maybe a little bit about that? Your point of view about the state of the evidence report. Why is it important? Your involvement, yes or no, of your organization. And a specific question in terms of, has our thinking on good practice around religious engagement evolved over the years? Because I think that's something that is part and parcel of this particular report.
Mm. So JLI, is my understanding, was birthed around kind of 2010 moment. I wasn't involved at the time, but it's good 14 years ago. Huge bodies of work that the organization has undertaken. And like I said, I've worked in the sector for over 25 years, and specifically around this faith and development narrative, this faith and development work, which has evolved over a period of time into being a solid, robust, trusted, well-researched, well-evidenced pieces of work on issues from HIV, in the 2000s, to livelihoods, to healthcare, to COVID, and the effects of over 14 years of solid evidence, good methodology that is robust, that is tested, that is challenged at all sorts of levels. And these reports are excellent reports. If anybody wants to have a look at what those reports look like, go to the JLI website. There's a plethora of reports, and the body of that work is huge. And so I think state of the evidence, takes a broader view and a look over a certain number of years, and pulls that together into a concise piece of work that is actually now telling a longer term story about that engagement. What has it meant over the years? What difference does it make? What value does it add? So I think it takes the body of research and gives you some factual information, but the analysis of that is giving us a trend and a trajectory. What is needed further? How do you make sense of world populations and trends around religious communities across the world, understanding that kind of these religious backdrops for some communities informs kind of their worldview, how their being, how they think, and how kind of communities act, what they value, what's a challenge, to help analyze that as we go into kind of the 2030s and beyond. You think about the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals as it relates to religion is a huge backdrop of that. In my organization, we talk about the majority worldviews,
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that there are some states, some regions that religion is a consistent backdrop. It helps people make sense of the world. So I think state of the evidence does exactly what it says on the tin in some sense. What is this, what does that evidence tell us? What is it predicting and analyzing? What does it help us to make sense of the current state
Mm-hmm.
and the future state? I have not been involved in its direct publication, but of course my organization has. And in terms of understanding what I agree with the analysis and have then been engaged in some conversations around
Mm-hmm.
what that analysis will mean for the kind of global community going forward.
You mentioned, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the value then of JLI in particular, the State of the Evidence report in, moving these goals forward. We are at the midpoint of the Sustainable Development Goals, and I think on average we only are reaching 15%. So that's really worrisome. So yeah, it seems that the JLI mission is more crucial than ever in terms of joint learning. Yeah, can you maybe elaborate a little bit more in terms of how do you see the potential of collaborative approaches in creating sustainable change?
So if I came at that the other way around, I would say if we don't collaborate, I'm not quite sure what the future is going to look like.
Mm,
So I think it is in some cases the analogy of a burning platform. If we are collectively to survive, um, our human experience, we have to work together better. So to collaborate, to share, to learn, in some cases to unlearn. Some of
mm,
the uh, backdrop, some of the language today is around how we decolonize um, our thinking and our
mhm,
methodology and our practice. We are a diverse and in some cases complicated world. And we all have different entry points. And if we are moving from the cliff edge of saying, my way is better than your way, wherever you may sit in the world, to one that is much more fairer and has equity and has value and worth, then we need to start a different approach, which is shared and joint from the beginning, not, you know, um, designed in one place and then asks for engagement, kind of at the other end. I'll give an example of a conversation that I had with another JLI member just a couple of weeks ago, who challenged me and said, well, not challenged, but what they said is one of the things that they valued about JLI but did not find in other spaces is if we were baking a JLI cake, everybody would be involved at the beginning and would add the ingredients.
mm,
And the final cake will be kind of something everybody could enjoy and said, I helped to bake this cake.
mm,
And I'm using that analogy to say, if we are, kind of baking this kind of global cake, then all of us, or as it needs to be as diverse as possible, if we are all to identify and enjoy the ingredients. We all bring something unique in that. And some traditions are written traditions, some traditions are oral traditions, some traditions, are acted out traditions. That challenge is for us. We have to find, in some cases, a new language to speak to each other that demonstrates worth and value, because we all have something to add into that global cake, so to speak.
An interesting analogy, and I like cake, so that's always good. Um, you mentioned decolonization, Dionne, and a lot is going on, also around localization. Where do you where do you see the debates about localization and decolonization going, especially in terms of religious and development, in the, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years?
Mm. I think that the conversation is well overdue for a long time. So I'm really pleased that it's happening, and I'm pleased that JLI is taking a lead role in some of that in terms of its own methodology and how it ensures that the voices around the table reflect those kind of decolonization principles. That's really important. So I'm really pleased JLI is taking a lead in that. Where is that debate looking? What is it looking like across the table? I remember in 2015, I think it was the World Humanitarian Forum, that one of the things that they really wanted to bring to the main table was around this idea of localization. Not that it was new, but actually I think there's a bit of a tipping point at that stage, I think, that helped to reorientate the conversation, that would give status and kudos to people who are living grassroots community, for want of a better word, had in the main, the best ideas around how they could become more resilient, what tools they needed to enable them to cope, to manage, to live alongside, kind of some of the risks that kind of, particularly if there's that they are environmental, right? But there were deep, meaningful ideas around the alternative. What does the alternative look like? It isn't always an alternative that is parachuted from outside, but within those communities. And so the localized approach takes seriously the contributions of those who are most affected. How can that be wrong? Why wouldn't you support that? Why wouldn't you invest in that? When I think about schools, uh, provisions within the communities, there's always, an engagement a strategy that says, let's involve those who are most affected by that. For me, the principle is exactly the same, and not to seek a localized approach in some of these global regions, in some of these national, spaces, local spaces. I think it should not be an either or. For me, I think it's a both and. Of course, there's going to be knowledge and expertise from outside the kind of wider circle that should not be competing with the experience, the knowledge, the value, and the deep understanding of what is happening on the ground and how people think and feel. And so for me, it is a central red thread, almost a golden thread, running through the work, the thinking, and the approach at JLI. But equally, that is true in many other organizations that has prioritized localization and a localized approach. I would say again, that is not going away, quite rightly so. And so we do need to find ways to continue investing in that model and giving platforms to voices that have often been on the margins of some of the issues and events in which we are working.
No, thanks for that, Dionne. I would say, so I heard some of our colleagues in JLI say we really need to be more intentional about expanding that table, right? I mean, that's to have more voices around the table, to listen to that. I mean, the reality is, and listeners of previous JLI episodes have heard it as well. The organization has some financial challenges. So that's also, I think, a reason to expand the table is to find more supporters, to increase our community. if there are people out there, individuals or organizations, yeah, what would you say to them? Why would they become part of this community? And would consider putting the 3 T's, for JLI. So that's his time, the treasure, and the talent. Why would they do that?
Why not? I would say. I would say that kind of the work with JLI for me, as I experience it and lead it, is not doing to or doing for, but doing with. So working, partnering, supporting the work of JLI is an agenda about we, us, and ours. It is our work together. It's what we are doing in order to further our learning and understanding around pieces of research, evidence and learning, capacity sharing, all of those sorts of things. Is how are we doing that together? And that's worth some investment of developing those channels of listening to each other. So you're right, you said earlier in terms of expanding the table. For me, that's a sustainable way forward, because the table, evidence will tell us, has been biased for too long. In some cases, there's overrepresentation of particular groups and therefore underrepresentation of others. We want to ensure that the table is fair and diverse and representative, and find ways where um, we excavate some resources to do the work to fulfill the vision in which we want to see come about. And that is, in some cases, money. We've got we've got to fund this thing together, and that's exactly what I'm suggesting. Work with us to co-fund some areas of mutuality, maybe. um, but we must find ways to fund what our shared visions and shared priorities and shared commitments are around doing a diverse piece of work at a regional level, at national levels, and partner with others that don't look, think, um, and function in the way that we do.
Mm.
And being courageous to do that as well.
Yeah, I would like to, piggyback of something that you also mentioned, is that, ensuring not only when we talk about expanding the table, but also about ensuring that, that there are different perspectives and that we have different ways of communicating as well, oral traditions, written, name it. That's also one of the reasons that I always have a music related question for my guests. If I ask you to come up with a piece of music or a song that, according to you, really captures what JLI is about, which song or piece of music would you mention, and why?
This is a good question. I think so. I'm my pause is because I'm somewhere between two songs. Two thoughts. One is I am a child that grew up in the 70s and 80s, so giving some sense of how old I am. But an album that really anchored me during that time was Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder. And my mother was a Motown supporter. My father was a jazz fanatic. And so within Songs in the Key of Life, I very often come back to the song love's in need of love today. And love as a
Beautiful
value,
song.
mm, love as a value for lots of people may surface feelings of, kind of warm and fuzziness.
Mm.
Um, but love as a verb is about doing. It is, courageously doing for. And I think of the work in terms of JLI in that sense of doing. It's not just about what we say, it's about what we do in an expression of trying to capture something that is uniquely human of how we live and work together. And sometimes that's not always easy to put into um, you know, very nice articulation of words. It's often a feeling, and which is why values-based approaches is so important. And I think that is true of the work of JLI. It brings me back to this sense of if we were to secure peace, if we were to secure an idea of how people flourish and function and live together, it's captured within the words of those songs, but it's also capturing for me a value-based approach, which I see running through the work of JLI, and that doesn't just happen by itself. It is intentional. Our business is around the business of people, and that's wrapped around, kind of the work and the frameworks and the structures and the systems and processes that runs alongside that. That is all important. That gives you good outcomes. But actually, the why we do what we do is that vision around, kind of human flourishing, that progression, that the next generation's life will be better than the generations before. I remember hearing a really, kind of inspiring TED talk. Who hasn't heard, good TED talks? And it started off that I am better than my parents. And I thought, whoa. But actually, by the time, the speaker finished at 10 minutes, absolutely, that is the dream of as me as a mother, right? That my children would be, in a flourishing better. That was the dream of my parents. My parents emigrated to the UK, from two different Caribbean islands. So this idea that we leave a legacy is the values in which we live. And so for me, I think that that song does name it. As unusual as that might sound, it does wrap up the values, I think.
Mm. No, that's beautiful, and actually is one of my favorite albums as well. So,
Good.
if
I
not
wasn't alone.
the most, yeah, you know, a couple of years ago, my wife gave for my birthday actually to go to a concert of Stevie where he only played all the songs of that album, Songs in the Key of Life, and which was
Wow.
unbelievable. Yeah. Um, I'm although I asked you for one song, I'm curious about your, because you were going back and forth between two pieces of music, right? So what is the other?
So the other one actually is a Bob Marley classic,
Mm,
which so Redemption Song again speaks to this idea of true freedom, right? This idea of being free, and again is as emotive in terms of values that anchor us as humans, as people. So it's moving, for me, the songs that move me are the songs that speaks to the human experience. In some cases where we get it absolutely wrong, but juxtapose that with where we get it right is about intentionally pursuing values that is about um, we, us, and ours, not about me, myself, and I. And so that pursuit of we, us, and ours, for me, again, moves me, and I find an affinity with those values.
great. Thanks, John. Um, and I love that what you said in terms of we, our community. If you think about our community within JLI, if I ask you to name, a colleague or a partner or a supporter of JLI who best embodies, according to you, what JLI is about, who will you name and why? And again, I totally get that, my guests feel uncomfortable in maybe lifting up one because you appreciate it, so many, but I'm pushing you as a guest anyway to pick one. Um,
Wasn't too hard to think about this one, actually. I guess it
hmm,
would be Agnes, Dr. Agnes is a Bloem,
mhm,
from Kenya. So Agnes always reminded me whenever I saw her, whatever platform she would work on. So Agnes was the moderator of the World Council of Churches for, I think, a good season, a good 10 years or so. And she would always remind me to never give up. Persist in persisting is what she would say. And she'd say it in a very quiet, soft, gentle voice. Don't give up the struggle. Keep persisting. Keep going. Even if you feel that the progress is slow, that you're not heard, be tenacious in persisting. And in the work of JLI over, kind of the last decade particularly, was always encouraging us to do exactly that. Even when there was really good news and we were celebrating, keep pushing forward, keep, uncovering, uh, uncovering new stuff, new information, new knowledge. Keep, kind of walking forward. Don't stop. Don't walk backwards. Keep moving forward. And I remember that as a message within the JLI space, that we must keep pursuing the
hmm.
goals together and keep moving forward.
Talking about moving forward, um, yeah, uh, what is your opinion, or what is your vision or hope about the focus, uh, for the future of JLI? Or maybe in other words, and it's somehow related as well. So if years from now people look back at when you were the chair, and you are the chair now, but they will look back and what do you hope people will say in terms of, oh, when Dionne was the chair, that she did this and this together with a team that led to this. Well, what do you hope?
Mm. I would hope, it's a big question. um, I would hope that part of the legacy of the current board, which I'm privileged to serve, so that it is
Hmm.
a collective as opposed to one person.
Hmm.
But during this tenure, we championed and found and developed a global audience, a global community that carried forward the work around state of the evidence, that methodology of how we learn, research evidence together, build the capacity, and reduce the knowledge gaps between, the various different sector or stakeholder groups. That during this time we absolutely championed and gave a unique platform to the body of work, which is the state of the evidence, and championed as a part of that a kind of fair and equitable way forward. So that is keeping these principles, which are decolonial principles, but for me, it is expanding the table. Who's at the table, who has visibility at the table. So to ensure that research and evidencing is not the one thing that any one community brings. It is a collective, a collaboration between different stakeholders that are absolutely committed to evidencing what we know, to communicate that in different ways. So that's not just in a written form. We translate that into different forms so more people can participate in that experience. So I hope that during this time, the table is broadened, more people are actively involved and engaged, and state of the evidence is something that resonates with a much more broader community of people than it currently does at the moment.
Dionne, what do you hope that this podcast episode might do for JLI?
I hope it sparks some interest so people would want to find out a bit more. So, that they go on to the JLI website and have a look and see, exactly what is this piece of work that I'm talking about? What is the state of the evidence? What is the work of JLI, and what success has it had? And although I've talked quite broadly in this podcast, we have had learning hubs, regional learning hubs, thematic learning hubs. By that I mean they're specific to a theme of interest. And again, those reports, which are excellent in terms of their content and production, are on the website and are good resources for people across kind of who are policymakers, who are practitioners, who are working at national levels in governments, who are working within community organisation or the voluntary sector, even the private sector in terms of healthcare. These are important tools to help other communities understand and learn about the journey of others as it relates to what actually are areas of work that touches most parts of our lives. And it's important to kind of get the message out there that that these reports exist and they're free. You can go to the website and download them. You can read through them. Some really good workshops, some really good learning platforms where I'm not sure where else you can get access to such a range of voices and experience. And so I really hope that it sparks curiosity so that people go to the website and have a look and say, what is she talking about? you know.
No, and I had a question for you. Why is JLI not another interfaith organization? But I think you just explained that it is definitely different. I haven't seen anything like it, and I like you. I think there are many years around. So if there are listeners out there who would have a different view, I would love to hear from them because I think the JLI is quite unique. Dionne, these conversations always go fast, but before we close, I would like to ask you, is there a question that I should have asked you that I didn't?
I'm not sure that there is. I think perhaps no. And if one doesn't come to mind straight away, then probably that's not true.
Yeah, and we of course we invite the listeners and people out there to reach out if they want to know more, or if they think, oh, we would like to be part of this community, right? So we'll make sure that all the information is in the podcast notes, and the website, and the email addresses. So thank you for everything you do, Dionne, and for who you are, and all the best.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me, Maurice. It was a delight to join you as we virtually walked and talked. Thank you.
Yes, we did. And we listened. Yeah.
And we
Great.
listened too. Thank you.
Extra mile. Maybe it ain't just time.
As we wrap up today's insightful conversation, I hope it has sparked your curiosity and interest in the vital work of the Joint Learning Initiative on Faith and Local Communities, JLI. If today's episode has resonated with you, whether it's the desire to collaborate, contribute, or even offer financial support to further JLI's impactful mission, we'd love to hear more from you. The JLI's journey is one of collaboration, learning, and making a tangible difference in communities through the unique intersection of faith and development. Your involvement could be a significant part of this transformative process, whether you're looking to offer your expertise, resources, or are seeking to understand more about how you can contribute. Your initiative is invaluable. Please feel free to reach out to us. Send an email to Maurice at jliflc.com or contact us through our platform. We welcome your thoughts, questions, and proposals for collaboration. I'll personally ensure that your interest is directed to the right people at JLI, helping you connect with a network of individuals and organizations dedicated to creating a better world through faith-informed development. Thank you for joining us on Walk, Talk, Listen, where each conversation brings us closer to understanding and action. Your engagement doesn't just end with listening, it begins here. Let's continue to be part of this remarkable journey together. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Walk, Talk, Listen. Please check us out on 100mile.org or follow us on Facebook or Instagram.